Every holiday, they told me where to be, what to bring, how to behave. I smiled, played along until the year I didn't. One quiet evening, I invited them over, served dinner, and hit play on a video they never saw coming. In less than 5 minutes, their perfect image cracked wide open. And as their faces twisted in shock, I finally felt it. Freedom. But that was only the beginning. For the first few years of my marriage, I told myself things would get better, that it was just a phase, that Ethan's parents would eventually stop treating every holiday like their personal kingdom and me, like a subject they barely tolerated. But year after year, it was the same routine. Carol, my mother-in-law, would call with that sugary voice of hers and announce the holiday plans, what we'd eat, what time we'd arrive, and sometimes even what we should wear. Not ask, announce, as if we were employees at her company instead of family with our own lives. Ethan would always sigh and say, "Just go along with it," like that was supposed to be enough, like I wasn't allowed to feel anything. At first, I bit my tongue. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe it wasn't worth the fight. But over time, those little things started to chip away at me, missing Thanksgiving with my parents, being treated like the help instead of family, and watching Ethan check out of every conflict like it didn't matter. By the 4th year, I was done pretending. It was the week before Thanksgiving when Carol called again. I already knew what was coming. "I've planned the entire menu," she said brightly, like she was doing me a favor. "And I know how much you love bringing a dish, so I'll let you bring the rolls." The rolls. Not even homemade store-bought. I should have been used to it by then, but something in me snapped. I looked over at Ethan, who was already rubbing his temples like he couldn't bear another disagreement. "Just go along with it," he mumbled, not even meeting my eyes. I took a deep breath. "Sure," I said sweetly. "But first, let's watch something together." That Saturday, I invited Carol and Greg, my father-in-law, over for dinner. They showed up smiling, smug, assuming I'd come crawling back like always. Carol walked in like she owned the place, complimenting the table, criticizing the lighting, and asking if I'd made her favorite wine punch. Instead of answering, I turned on the TV. The screen lit up, and for a moment, confusion crossed Carol's face. Then the video began. It was a compilation I'd quietly assembled over the years. Short clips at first, Carol snapping at me over mashed potatoes, Greg muttering about how wives should be seen and not heard, Carol snooping through our bedroom the previous Christmas, caught on our security camera as she dug through my jewelry box and opened my nightstand drawers, Greg making a racist comment about my cousin at Easter, Carol mocking Ethan behind his back, calling him spineless for letting me have an opinion. And then came the final piece, a clip from my car's dash cam, recorded the night before our wedding. Carol had no idea my car recorded audio, but it caught her voice, clear as day. I give it 6 months. He'll divorce her and find a proper wife. The room fell silent. Carol's face drained of color. Greg stared at the screen like it had slapped him. Ethan's eyes were wide, fixed, like he was finally seeing something he'd refused to acknowledge for years. "Where did you get this?" Carol asked, her voice tight. I shrugged. "You know me, always prepared." Ethan turned to me, stunned. "Why didn't you show me this before?" I tilted my head. "Would you have believed me?" He didn't answer. Carol tried again, her voice wobbling. You have to delete that." I smiled. "Oh, Carol, don't be silly. It's already backed up." The panic in her eyes was real now. Greg turned to Ethan. "Son, you need to handle this." Ethan just stared at the screen. "We'll be spending the holidays on our own this year," I said calmly. "And from now on, if you try to guilt trip us, threaten us, or go through our things again." I picked up my phone. "Well, let's just say I might feel generous and share this with the entire family group chat." Carol's face twisted between rage and fear. Greg just looked defeated. They left without another word. Ethan sat in silence for a long time after they left. Finally, he exhaled. "Holy," he whispered. I nodded. "Now, do you see why I was upset?" "Yeah," he said slowly. "I think I do." For the first time in our marriage, Ethan actually stood up to them. And for the first time, I felt free. But I knew better than to think it was over. Carol wasn't the type to back down. She didn't call the next day, or the next. 5 days passed without a word. I started to think maybe, just maybe, they'd accepted defeat. I should have known better. At 2 a.m., on the 6th day, Ethan's phone buzzed. Then again, and again, and again. I rolled over, my stomach sinking. Ethan groaned, grabbed his phone, and froze. His face twisted. "What the hell?" I sat up. "What is it?" He didn't answer. I leaned over and grabbed the phone. And there it was, the family group chat was on fire. Messages were flying in from aunts, uncles, cousins. "Did you see what Carol posted? OMG, Ethan, WTF is going on? You should be ashamed." I scrolled up. At the top of the chat was a dramatic public Facebook post from Carol, a masterpiece of manipulation. She called herself heartbroken, claimed I'd brainwashed Ethan, said she'd lost her son to a cruel, controlling woman. She wrapped it in just enough sentiment to look sympathetic to anyone who didn't know the truth. And it worked. The comments were full of pity. "You don't deserve this, Carol. Stay strong. He'll come back." Even Ethan's brother chimed in, telling him to stop cutting off your parents. I stared at the screen, stunned. "She's flipping the script," I muttered. "She's making herself the victim." Ethan looked devastated. I don't understand. But I did. She had lost control of Ethan in private, so now she was trying to control him in public. And the worst part? It was working. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone like it had grown fangs. His shoulders were hunched, his hands trembling slightly. I watched him for a long moment before quietly standing and walking to the kitchen. I needed to breathe. I needed space to think. She wasn't just manipulating him anymore. She was lighting the match and throwing it into our life, all with a smile and a prayer emoji. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't post a rebuttal. I knew that silence in moments like this was its own kind of power. If I jumped into the mud with her, all she'd do was say, "See? Look how combative she is." I'd play right into her hands. But Ethan, he couldn't ignore it. The next morning, he called her. She picked up on the first ring, already in tears. Fake ones. "Ethan, sweetheart," she sobbed. "I knew you'd come around. I knew you'd see how much this family means." He took a shaky breath. "Mom, take the post down." There was a beat of silence, then a tight little laugh. "Oh, honey, why would I do that?" "Because it's a lie," she gasped, like he'd slapped her. "A lie? Ethan, I've done nothing but love you. And what do I get? Humiliation, betrayal." I could hear it even through the phone. That shift. The moment the crocodile tears dried up and the venom took over, Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. "You went through our bedroom. You called my wife controlling. You said you hoped I'd divorce her." "Oh, so now she's feeding you lines," Carol snapped. "I see how this works. First she isolates you, then she poisons you against your own mother." "I saw the videos," Ethan said, voice quiet but firm. "With my own eyes." For a second, there was nothing, just breathing. Then Carol's voice turned cold. "Well, if that's how you feel, I guess we'll see you at Christmas. Or not at all." And she hung up. Ethan didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the phone. "You okay?" I asked. He looked up, eyes wide. "She's not going to stop." And for the first time, I believed he understood. But understanding wasn't enough. Over the next week, Ethan's phone became a battlefield. Messages poured in from relatives, some asking questions, some offering support, but many siding with Carol. They didn't want facts. They wanted to believe the fairy tale she had fed them for years, that she was the perfect mother, and I was the outsider who had ruined everything. Some even accused me of staging the videos. I stayed quiet, but Ethan, he couldn't. He tried reasoning, explaining. "There are things you haven't seen," he wrote. "Mom isn't the victim here." But it didn't matter. People believe what's easiest. And blaming me? That was easy. Then his brother Ryan called. "Look, man," Ryan said, his voice tight. "I don't know what's going on, but Mom's a mess. She's not eating. She's crying every day. She says you won't talk to her." Ethan rubbed his face. "Ryan, she's playing you. You don't know that. If she's so upset, why is she still posting on Facebook?" There was a pause. "She's just trying to explain her side." "Her side is a bunch of lies," Ethan snapped. "Did she tell you she went through our bedroom, called my wife names, said she hoped I'd get divorced?" Ryan went quiet. "No," he finally said. "Exactly. Because she only tells the version that makes her look good." "She's still your mom," Ryan muttered. "And she's giving me a choice her way, or nothing." Ryan sighed. "Just think about it, man." Then he hung up. That should have been the end of it. But Carol wasn't finished. A few days later, Ethan was at work when someone knocked on our door. I was home alone. I peeked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. It was the police. For a moment, I thought something had happened to Ethan. An accident, a robbery. My heart pounded as I opened the door. "Ma'am," one officer said, "we received a call about a possible domestic disturbance at this address." I blinked. "What?" "The caller reported concerns about a woman in distress," he added. "Possible emotional abuse." The words hit like ice water. "Carol," I took a deep breath. "I think there's been a mistake. Mind stepping outside?" I complied. One officer stayed with me while the other checked the house. "Is your husband home?" "No," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are you okay?" I let out a humorless laugh. "I'm fine." He looked at me carefully, then nodded. "Sorry for the trouble. We had to follow up." As soon as they left, I called Ethan. "The second he picked up," I said, "your mother just sent the cops to our house." There was silence. Then, quietly, he said, "Tell me everything." When he got home that night, he didn't speak for a long time. Then, without a word, he grabbed his phone and texted her. "Did you call the police on my wife?" "Read at 9:42 p.m. No response. He waited an hour. Then he called. She answered with a sigh. "Oh, sweetheart, I was just about to call you. Did you send the cops to our house?" Silence. Then, "Oh my God, is that what they told you?" "No, honey, I'd never do that. But I may have mentioned to a friend that I was worried. Maybe she called. I had no idea." Ethan hung up. No yelling, no arguing, just ended the call. Then he turned to me and said, "She's done." And just like that, he blocked her. On his phone, on Facebook, everywhere. She tried everything, calling from different numbers, sending messages through his dad, through Ryan. None of it worked. Then came the final act of desperation. She showed up at Ethan's office, in tears. Security had to escort her out. That night, she left him a voicemail. "I hope you're happy, Ethan. You broke your mother's heart. I don't even know if I'll be here next Christmas. I hope you can live with yourself." Ethan played it for me. I waited, expecting him to crumble, but he didn't. He shook his head. "She's never going to stop," he said. I placed my hand on his. "So what do we do now?" He looked at me, and with more steel in his voice than I'd ever heard before, he said, "We end this." Saturday came faster than either of us expected. Ethan had sent the message days earlier, a simple one in the family group chat. We need to talk. No more side conversations. No more rumors. This ends now. Meet at our house this Saturday at 3 p.m. No one replied. Not Carol, not Greg, not Ryan, but we knew they'd come. Carol wouldn't miss a chance to twist the narrative back in her favor, and she'd never turn down a live audience. That morning, our house was tense. Ethan moved slowly, deliberately checking the door locks, rearranging chairs like it might somehow help him stay calm. I stayed out of his way, just letting him breathe. For once, I didn't try to carry the load. He had to do this his way. At exactly 3 o'clock, they arrived. First Ryan, then a couple of aunts and cousins, then Greg, silent and stiff, and finally, Carol last through the door, like royalty entering court. She looked immaculate, as always, her makeup flawless, her blouse perfectly pressed. She even brought a pie. I almost laughed. She glanced around the room, eyes cold, but lips curved in a tight little smile. Well, she said, should we sit? No one did. Ethan stood in the center of the living room, arms crossed. Carol sighed, dramatic and heavy. Ethan, honey, is this really necessary? This family's been through enough. His jaw clenched. Yeah, Mom, it is. She put a hand to her chest. I just want to fix things. I've been sick with worry. I haven't eaten. I haven't slept. He didn't blink. Then why did you send the police to our house? The room went still. You could hear the refrigerator hum in the silence. Carol blinked. What? Police? Ethan, I would never. Stop lying, he said, his voice sharp. For the first time since she walked in, she looked rattled. Greg shifted uncomfortably. Ryan looked down at his shoes. No one came to her defense. I didn't want to do this, Ethan said, pulling out his phone. But you forced my hand. He pressed play. Her voice filled the room. That voicemail she'd left full of manipulation, guilt, and subtle threats. I hope you're happy, Ethan. You broke your mother's heart. I don't even know if I'll be here next Christmas. I hope you can live with yourself. When it ended, no one said a word. Then Ethan looked up, and what he said next broke something wide open. This is emotional abuse, Carol gasped. Her mouth fell open as she looked around the room, hoping anyone would jump in to save her. But the silence stayed thick. Even Ryan didn't speak. I've spent my entire life trying to make you happy, Ethan said. His voice shook, not with fear, but with something deeper. Pain, but it's never enough. You always need more and more control, more attention, more power. And when you don't get it, you lie, you guilt, you manipulate. Carol shook her head quickly. That's not true, Ethan. You're confused. He stepped forward. You told my wife I'd divorce her before we were even married. A few gasps echoed around the room. Carol's face flushed red. I didn't mean. You went through our bedroom. You insulted her. You called her controlling. You called me weak. And then you lied to this entire family about what happened. He turned to Greg. Dad, you've been quiet. Want to defend her? Greg cleared his throat. Your mother only meant well. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Of course she did. He looked back at the group. This is the truth. You've all seen it now. You can either believe it or keep pretending. But either way, he turned to Carol. We're done. Carol's face twisted. You can't just. We can. And we are. Ryan stepped forward, brows knit. Ethan, come on. She's still your mom. No, Ryan. She's your mom. She's my abuser. And just like that, it was over. Carol's entire body shook. Her hands clutched her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. You can't do this to me, she hissed. I am your mother. Ethan didn't flinch. Then act like one. He pointed to the door. Get out. Carol hesitated. For just a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear. Real, raw fear. She knew she'd lost. She let out a shaky breath. Then she turned and walked out. Greg followed. Then Ryan. Then the cousins and aunts' heads low. No goodbyes, no apologies. Just quiet footsteps and the soft click of the door. When the door shut, Ethan let out a long breath. His shoulders slumped. His hands trembled. I walked over and gently placed my hand on his back. He let me, and for the first time in years, he was free. Of course, Carol didn't stop. She sent message after message, voicemails that started with pleading and ended with threats, emails dripping with guilt, texts from fake numbers. She even tried to get through via Greg and Ryan. Ethan never replied. When Christmas rolled around, she sent a long email, dramatic and pained. I never thought my own son would abandon me on the holidays. I hope your new family is worth it. Ethan read it, then deleted it. We spent Christmas alone for the first time. Just the two of us. No guilt, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. We made cocoa, watched old movies. We laughed. And for the first time, the holidays felt like ours. Not Carol's, not Greg's, ours. And that was the best revenge of all. We thought the storm had passed. The family meeting had been the final line in the sand, and for a little while, it felt like we were finally free. The silence that followed was eerie, but welcome. No more surprise visits. No more guilt trips. Just peace. Then the letter arrived. It showed up 2 weeks after Christmas, tucked in a plain envelope with no return address. Ethan found it in the mailbox and handed it to me like it might be ticking. I opened it slowly, my gut already twisting. Inside was a photo. A baby girl, maybe a few weeks old, wrapped in a soft pink blanket. On the back, in familiar handwriting, was a name, Grace Margaret. Underneath, a note, "She's healthy. I thought you should know." It was from Ryan. I stared at the photo for a long time, not because of the baby, but because of the name, Margaret, Diane's middle name, a final stamp of control, even from a distance. I didn't cry. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't even feel sad, just still. This baby wasn't mine. This story wasn't mine, and the life they were building, that wasn't mine either. I placed the photo on the counter. That night, after dinner, I lit a small fire in the fireplace and burned it, not out of anger, but because I was finally done carrying anything that didn't belong to me. Sometime later, Terry, Ethan's cousin, invited us to a small gathering. No pressure, he'd said, just a few of us, people who actually care about you. I hesitated. Part of me was still raw, still healing. The thought of being in a room with anyone from that family made my chest tighten. But something told me this was different. So we went. When we walked in, the house was warm and welcoming. No one looked shocked. No one whispered. Terry's wife handed me a glass of wine and said, "You look radiant." And I believed her. No one asked me to serve. No one expected me to clean up. I was a guest for the first time in that family. At one point, Terry's wife leaned over and whispered, "You have no idea how many women in this family are proud of you." I smiled. Maybe I do, because I'd felt it. That ripple effect, the way one person standing up quietly gives others permission to do the same. Maybe they weren't ready to speak up yet, but they were watching, and they were waking up. That spring, I signed up for a watercolor class at the local senior center. Not because I was any good at painting, believe me. I wasn't, but because it made me feel new again. Every Tuesday morning, I'd pack my little bag and head over to the community room, surrounded by people who were also rediscovering themselves. One morning, while walking through the park after class, a woman stopped me. "Excuse me," she said. She looked vaguely familiar, mid-60s, kind eyes. "Are you the one who sent that email to the family last year?" I blinked. Yes, that was me. She smiled. her eyes shining with tears. "I saved it," she said. "It gave me the courage to leave." After 40 years, I stood there, stunned. She touched my hand. "Thank you." That's when it hit me. I hadn't just saved myself. I had created a ripple, and that ripple was still moving. Then, one morning in April, another message came through. This time, from Diane. It wasn't a phone call. It wasn't an apology. Just a cold little text, dropped like a stone in the middle of my peace. "You should return the profits from the lake house." It was meant to stay in the family. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it and blocked her number. She could sit with her bitterness. I wasn't carrying it anymore. Meanwhile, Ethan's father's case finally went to trial. The investigation had uncovered more than even we expected. Decades of financial misconduct, false accounts, laundering through fake vendors. He took a plea deal to avoid prison time, but their business was ruined. Their standing in the community collapsed almost overnight. The man who used to walk into church like he owned the place now couldn't even show his face without being whispered about. Diane tried to maintain the image. She started volunteering more, kept attending luncheons, showed up to community events with her chin held high. But everyone knew. People were polite, but distant, and she hated that most of all. Ryan moved out of state. I heard he was trying to start over somewhere quiet, away from the headlines. But that stain? It followed him. It always would. As for me, I kept moving forward. My name, once dragged through the mud, started to rebuild its shine in Austin. I found friends who liked me not for the casseroles I made or how well I kept quiet, but for who I was. I painted my apartment walls whatever color I wanted. I filled it with plants and secondhand treasures. I laughed louder. I ate slower. I stopped apologizing for needing space. Sometimes I thought about the lake house, the one they all said would never belong to me. The one I sold, not out of spite, out of freedom, because in the end, they tried to erase me, but I erased them. That summer was quiet. Not the eerie, tension-filled kind of quiet that used to hang in the air after one of Diane's guilt trips, but a real, gentle peace. The kind that settles over you when you know, deep down, that you're safe, that the worst is behind you. I planted flowers in the little pots on my balcony, painted them bright blue just because I could. I picked up old hobbies, the ones I used to love before I got too busy keeping up appearances. I baked for no one but myself, filled the apartment with the smell of cinnamon and honey. I even started taking long walks again, not to clear my head, but to enjoy the silence in it. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be anything for anyone. Ethan changed too. He still carried guilt, though he rarely said it out loud. Sometimes I'd catch him staring off, a frown on his face, and I knew he was thinking about his mom, about his dad, about the way everything shattered, and how long he had pretended not to notice the cracks. But something had shifted in him. He didn't flinch when their names came up anymore. He didn't defend them. And he never not once asked me to just go along with it again. One Sunday morning, we sat on the porch, sipping coffee while the dog curled up at our feet. The world was quiet around us, the sky wide and blue. Ethan looked over at me and asked, "Do you ever regret it?" It was a fair question. I took a sip of my coffee, felt the warmth settle into my chest, and shook my head. "No," I said simply. "I regret not doing it sooner." He nodded, but I could tell he was still wrestling with something. So I waited. I think I let them shape too much of who I was, he said after a long pause. I was scared that if I pushed back, I'd lose them. I looked at him gently. "And now that you did?" He didn't answer right away. Then he sighed. "I think I found myself." There it was, a truth we had both come to learn. Sometimes, losing people is the only way to find yourself. A few weeks later, We were invited to another small gathering this time, not with family, but with friends, people we had come to trust. A potluck, hosted by one of the women in my painting class. It was nothing fancy, just folding chairs, paper plates, and a lot of laughter, but it felt more like family than anything I'd had in years. As I stood in the kitchen helping slice strawberries, one of the women leaned over and said, "You're Laura, right? From the lake house story?" I blinked. "I guess that's me." She smiled warmly. "I just wanted to say you're kind of a legend around here." I laughed, genuinely surprised. Legend? For what? For getting out, for standing up, for not letting them guilt you back into a life that wasn't yours. I didn't know what to say to that, but her words stuck with me. It was strange, being seen as strong. For so long, I had felt like I was just surviving. But maybe strength looks like that, sometimes quiet, tired, and still showing up. Later that night, as we walked home hand in hand, Ethan said, "They're right, you know. You were always strong. I just never saw it because I was too busy trying to keep the peace." I squeezed his hand. "You see it now." And that was enough. We were still rebuilding, still figuring out what it meant to have boundaries and peace and the freedom to say no without explaining ourselves. But we were doing it together this time. Then, one morning in early fall, I received a letter. This one had a return address. It was from Diane. The envelope was thick, the paper expensive, like she was trying to impress me even through the mail. I debated tossing it straight into the trash, but something made me open it. Inside was a neatly written note, no dramatic prose, no tears, no fake pleasantries, just a few cold lines. "You may think you've won, but families remember. People talk. You'll always be the woman who ruined her husband's family." I folded it neatly, walked it over to the trash, and dropped it in without a second thought. She still didn't get it. This wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming the life she never let me live. That night, I told Ethan about it. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a hug and held me there for a long time. "We're not going back," he said quietly. I nodded. We never were. By Thanksgiving, we had made new plans, just the two of us. No drama, no traditions forced down our throats, no backhanded comments over dinner, just peace. We cooked together, laughed over a burnt pie crust, danced barefoot in the kitchen to a playlist that made no sense, and fell asleep on the couch with the dog wedged between us. No fancy tablecloths, no silent treatments, no pretending, just us. And that was the best holiday I'd ever had. Winter came softly that year, the kind of winter where the cold didn't feel like punishment, but a quiet permission to rest, to slow down, to breathe. Snow fell gently outside our windows, and for once, the only thing we had to worry about was whether the cocoa had enough marshmallows. It had been a long year, a year of truth, of walking away, of letting go, of finally choosing peace over performance. And now, on the other side of all that heartbreak, was something that looked a whole lot like healing. Ethan and I didn't speak much about his family anymore. Not because we were ignoring it, but because there wasn't anything left to say. The door had closed. The chapter had ended. And even though it didn't come with a happy reunion or a neatly tied bow, there was something honest in that kind of ending. But the world has a way of sending reminders, even when you think you've moved on. One chilly morning, as I stepped outside to check the mail, I found a small padded envelope in the box. No return address, just my name in tight, familiar handwriting. I opened it right there on the porch. Inside was a folded note and a small photograph. A baby girl, rosy cheeks, big brown eyes, wrapped in a pink blanket. On the back of the photo, in that same shaky hand, it read, "Grace Margaret." Beneath it, a single line, "She's healthy. I thought you should know." No signature. But I didn't need one. I knew who it was from. I stood there for a long moment, the cold nipping at my fingers, the wind tugging softly at my hair. I stared at the tiny face in the photo, waiting for some wave of emotion to crash over me. But it didn't come. There was no sadness, no longing, no bitterness, just stillness. This baby wasn't mine. This life wasn't mine. And that name Margaret wasn't a tribute. It was a message, a final attempt to rewrite the story in her favor. I walked back inside, set the photo on the kitchen counter, and stared at it once more. Then, that night, I burned it. Not out of anger, not even out of defiance, but as ceremony. I didn't need to carry that weight anymore. It wasn't mine to hold. Sometime later, Terry, the only one in Ethan's family who had ever stood beside us, invited us over for a small New Year's dinner. "Just a few of us," he said. "People who actually care about you." I hesitated at first. Part of me still braced at the thought of stepping into any family setting again, but something in his voice felt different, sincere. So we went. And when we arrived, the house wasn't perfect. It was warm, lived in. There were kids' toys under the couch, a casserole dish that had slightly overcooked edges, and a cat asleep on a laundry basket in the corner. But there was laughter, real laughter, and no one expected me to serve or smile through gritted teeth. They hugged us, poured us wine, pulled out chairs, and asked about our plans for the new year. Not once did anyone mention Diane. At one point, Terry's wife leaned over and whispered, "You have no idea how many women in this family are proud of you." I smiled. Maybe I do, because I'd started to feel it, this quiet ripple. The shift that happens when one woman stands up and says, "No more." When she stops shrinking just to make everyone else comfortable. When she finally takes up space in her own life. A few weeks later, I enrolled in a watercolor class at the senior center downtown. Not because I was any good, most of my paintings still looked like a child's birthday card, but because I wanted to do something for no one but myself. Every Tuesday morning, I showed up, sat by the window, and painted whatever came to mind. Flowers, birds. One time, a crooked little cabin that looked suspiciously like the lake house. And one morning after class, as I packed up my brushes, a woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Excuse me," she said, a little unsure. "Are you Laura?" I nodded, cautious. She smiled, her eyes watery. "I just wanted to say thank you. I saw the email you sent to the family. I saved it. It helped me find the courage to leave my own situation." I didn't know what to say. I just reached out and squeezed her hand. That's when I realized I hadn't just saved myself. I had created a ripple, and people were waking up. Not long after that, another message came. From Diane. This time, it was short. "You should return the profits from the house." It was meant to stay in the family. I didn't even blink. I deleted the message. And then I blocked her. For good. Let her keep her bitterness. Let her sit in the silence she once used as punishment. I had no room left for that. Meanwhile, Ryan's father's trial moved forward. He pled out to avoid prison, but everything else fell apart. The business was gone. The money dried up. The name that once opened doors now only brought shame. Diane faded from public view, no longer the queen of anything. Ryan moved out of state, tried to start fresh, but some stains don't wash out, not when they're written in lies and silence. And me? I kept going. I rebuilt, quietly, fully. My name began to grow again in Austin. My career blossomed. I made real friends, ones who liked me for my stories, not my silence. I laughed. I painted. I read books I'd never had time for. I bought flowers just because I liked how they looked on the table. Sometimes, when the wind was soft and the sky was pale, I thought about that house by the lake. The one they swore I'd never have. The one I sold not out of revenge, but out of freedom. Because in the end, they tried to erase me, but I erased them. And when people ask me now if I miss them, If I regret how it all turned out, I just smile and say, no, I finally came home to myself. Have you ever walked away from a place that made you feel small and found your strength on the other side? Leave, if you've taken your peace back. Or share your story in the comments. You never know who it might help find their own voice. As we grow older, many of us find ourselves reflecting on the quiet roles we've played: peacekeeper, caregiver, the one who lets it go for the sake of harmony. But sometimes, harmony becomes a disguise for imbalance. Laura's story is a powerful reminder that love doesn't require silence, and family doesn't excuse control. Her journey wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. She didn't burn bridges. She stopped rebuilding ones that led nowhere. For years, Laura sacrificed her voice to maintain an image, to keep the peace, to be accepted. But when she finally said, enough, she discovered something deeper than acceptance. She found freedom. It's never too late to choose peace. Not the kind that asks you to shrink, but the kind that makes room for you to stand tall. If you've ever given more than you received, if you've ever stayed quiet when you should have spoken up, know this, it's not too late. There's strength in choosing yourself. Have you ever had to walk away to find your voice again? What helped you take that first step? Share your story in the comments, or just leave a, if you're still learning how. You never know who might be inspired by your courage.